everybody, Peter Harris here. The topic of this video is the band Kiss. Now, Kiss was kind of in a transitional phase in the early 80s, and with the departure of lead guitar player Ace Frehley and a founding member, they ended up recruiting Vinnie Vincent. Now, Vinnie was the tail end of the makeup period, and he was the last member of Kiss to get his own original costume character, being the Ankh Warrior. So he was the last one to get a new makeup design. And he appeared on the album Lick It Up, which is actually the first album they took off the makeup. So at this point, Kiss was kind of like, we need to revitalize ourselves and kind of push into the 80s and kind of revamp this. So taking off the makeup, after a decade was kind of a big push for them to kind of renew the spotlight on the band. So Vinnie was more in the shredder category that was getting so popular in the 80s. And he was also, by all accounts, a huge pain in the ass to work with. And if you want more on that, you can read, the books by like Bobby Rock, the drummer for the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, after he left Kiss, for in-detail accounts of the recording of that album and what Vinnie's work ethic was like, and also comes from Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons in themselves. But so they removed the album for Lick It Up, and Vinnie's a huge pain in the butt to work with, and so he only lasts the one album. So enter a Mr. Mark Norton. His stage name was Mark St. John, and he auditioned for the band and ended up getting the gig. So, and this is out of obscurity. And he gets the gig, it's the gig of a lifetime. So, with the band being pulled in all kinds of different directions, Gene Simmons is off on his movie star career that he's pursuing, and Paul's doing other things. Apparently, according to Mark St. John, he was thrown in the recording studio by himself the first couple times. And he recorded several little things and solos, and they were not happy with what they heard. So he says it ended up being him like kind of on a very tight leash with the rest of the band, especially Paul and Gene, kind of hovering over him for anything he recorded to make sure they approved of what he was playing. For Paul Stanley's account, he says that one of the problems was that Mark St. John could never really play the same thing twice. They said he was just throwing out shredding notes like crazy, and but couldn't really duplicate what he was playing. So that was one of the sources of concern. But on that note, Mark St. John was very much a shredder in the vein of Vinnie Vincent. So obviously Kiss was kind of going for that, let's keep up with the Joneses and get a faster player, sort of the Eddie Van Halen Mark II, keeping up with the Yngwies and all these shredder guys that were starting to appear on the landscape. So Kiss does complete the album, which would eventually be entitled Animalize, with Mark St. John. So they got along well enough to complete the album, and he does play throughout it. Once the album's complete, they book a tour, and once the tour's getting ready to commence, Mark St. John comes down with apparently some kind of arthritic ailment where his hands swell up and he can't play. So the band's in kind of a tight spot here. They just got this new guitar player, record an album, tours on the books, they're ready to head out, and he's like, I can't do it. So he does go on the road with them, but they end up calling guitar player Bruce Kulick. Now, Bruce has a brother named Bob Kulick, and Bob had actually played on several Kiss recordings as a session player. Kiss has a history of sort of inserting session players in different places on their albums, without any credit. Anton Fig did some drum parts, et cetera, et cetera. But, so Bruce comes on the stage, and he's basically there. Every night they're kind of like, can Mark St. John play? No. Bruce Kulick goes out and plays the show. By all accounts, Mark St. John did play a few shows, one complete show, and several times he went there for a few songs until he was no longer able to perform. And it became apparent after a while that Bruce has been playing this whole tour. He's the one doing 90% of it, and he's going to end up being the new guitar player in Kiss. It's just, whose fault it was, who knows. But basically, he was just fulfilling the role successfully, and they just need to go with what was working. So after a disappointing and quick end to his tenure in Kiss, Mark St. John ends up forming a band called White Tiger. So I guess at this point, there was a real fascination with naming bands in the mid-'80s, White something, White Snake, Great White, White Lion, and I've got White Tiger. Didn't really go very far. You can find the album on YouTube. And Dave Donato on vocals, who was briefly in Black Sabbath. To my taste, Mark St. John's playing on his White Tiger album, it suffers from the same thing that the Vinnie Vincent Invasion albums did. Just unbelievable shredding. It's impressive, but it's just not enjoyable. endless noodling and just speed for speed's sake with no real focus and no real direction. And it gets kind of tiresome to listen to. So it's just not that enjoyable to me. And the album didn't go very far. And so White Tiger didn't make a dent anywhere, and Mark St. John found himself slipping further and further into obscurity. Now, he did make a few more attempts at relevance. He did do a project with Peter Criss, formerly of Kiss, and that also didn't go very far, and he ended up leaving that group. And he also made an EP in 1999, and a few years later in 2003, he made an instrumental album called The Magic Bullet Theory. And we all remember that album. Just kidding. No, we don't. Nobody remembers it. I'm just kidding. Some people do, but it didn't go further. It didn't make the splash that he was obviously hoping it would. And so after that, he basically really didn't make any more public appearances. Fast forward a few years to 2006. Mark St. John was incarcerated in Orange County, California for drug paraphernalia and resisting arrest. So at some point in his jail time, he purportedly stole something from another inmate, something minor like crackers or food from this other inmate, and he requested to be moved for his own safety. Word got out, and the story is that he was jumped by several inmates and savagely beaten, like brutally beaten. Of course, he gets out of jail at some point, and his friends, girlfriend at the time, all that, basically say he was never the same again. And he constantly complained of aches and pains throughout his body, severe headaches, and due to not having medical insurance, he never went to go see a doctor. He developed a drug habit, or continued a drug habit possibly, and was doing small jobs, landscaping, that kind of thing. And the end result is he ended up fully addicted and in serious health. The very next year, on April 5th of 2007, Mark St. John died. An overdose of methamphetamines, which leading to a brain hemorrhage, according to the coroner's report. So it's a sad ending to what should have been a fairy tale. You know, out of nowhere, this guy is suddenly the new lead guitar player in one of the biggest bands in rock history. You know, and it just doesn't materialize. He's on the album, not on the tour for all intents and purposes. And even a weird twist is he's actually, that album cover doesn't feature the band, so his face isn't even on the album cover. It actually is on the back cover, but you know what I'm saying. So he's actually one of the only guitar players to not feature on the front cover of a Kiss album. So it's just a lot of things combined to make him basically an unknown right after exiting the band. And just a long downward slope after that. So a lot of people do still remember Mark St. John, appreciate his playing, and the good part is that Analyze actually survived pretty well. A lot of Kiss fans still cite that as one of their go-to albums they really still enjoy and still gets a lot of play on a lot of people's turntables. So, you know, his memory will go on, and people still do listen to his and appreciate his work. So if you get a chance, check out a little playing by Mark St. John and give his tunes a spin.